Okay, members. Good evening and welcome to the Council's meeting of its Planning Committee in the Chamber, Magherafelt and virtually. I specifically welcome the public watching us through the live broadcast feed. The live broadcast will run for the period of our open business, but will end just before we move into confidential business. I will let you know before this happens. Just some housekeeping before we commence. Can I remind you, if you have joined the meeting remotely, please keep your audio on mute unless invited to speak, and then turn it off when finished speaking. Keep your video on at all times unless you have bandwidth or internet connection issues, where you are advised to try turning your video off. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand in the meeting or on screen and keep raised until observed by an officer or myself. Should we need to take a vote this evening, please raise your hand in the normal way and keep raised until advised to lower it. For members attending remotely, note that by voting on any application that you are confirming that you were in attendance for the duration of and you heard and saw all relevant information in connection with the application you vote on. When invited to speak, please introduce your name to the meeting. When finished, please put your audio to mute. For any member attending remotely, if you declare an interest in any item, please turn off your video and keep your audio on mute for the duration of the item. An addendum was emailed to all committee members at 5 p.m. today. There is also a hard copy on each desk in the chamber. Can all members attending remotely please confirm they received the addendum and that they have sufficient time to review it? Okay. If referring to a specific report, page, slide, etc., mention and clearly reference the report, page, slide, so that all members have a clear understanding of what is being discussed at all times. For members of the public that are exercising a right to speak by remote means, please ensure that you are able to hear and be heard by councillors, officers and any other requesting speaking rights on the particular application. If this isn't the case, you must advise the chair immediately. Please note that once your application has been decided, you will be removed from the meeting. If you wish to view the rest of the meeting, please join the live link. Can I remind the public and press that taking photographs of proceedings or the use of any other means to enable persons not present to see or hear any proceedings or make a contemporaneous oral report of any of the proceedings are all prohibited acts. Thank you, and we will now move to the first item of the agenda. Any apologies? No?
An apology for Kerry Martin.
Apology for Kerry Martin. Declarations of interest?
Oh, declaration of interest as well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Item 6.3, LA 094-2024-00464-F.
Thank you. So you can declare now or at any point during the meeting. So first of all, I'll hand over to Melvin. Melvin.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Chair. As usual, just to kick us off, with your agreement and members' agreement, I'll run through a request to defer for office meetings at the outset. So we've had a request to defer for an office meeting for item 5.2. Chair, we received a request for an office meeting on item 5.13, and in considering that proposal, the officer team are of a view that it would potentially be better value for members to just visit that site. It relates to structures that are on the ground that effectively need a visual assessment to be carried out, and I think personally there's more value in a site visit. So with your and members' agreement, I would propose the site visit on that one instead of a deferral at this point for an office meeting. Okay. Then item 5.16 is deferred for an office meeting. Item 6.15, which is the very last application on the agenda, I propose, Chair, and we've had a request from the agent for a deferral for a further meeting. There is some further information and clarity I think the team could benefit from if we have an office meeting on that one. So again, with your agreement and the members' agreement, I would propose that that's deferred for an office meeting. That's 6.15. And then there's one other application, Chair, with your permission, if I can raise item 6.6 on the agenda, which is the application for Galbally Pierce's GAC. Members will see in your addendum pack a request from the community group side who object to the proposal to date to further engage. You will see from the agenda that we have placed a recommendation to approve, and we're satisfied that the changes that have been made, and I welcome those changes by the applicant side, have addressed our concerns in terms of the officer's recommendation. And looking through the request, there's clearly an expectation from maybe some comments that were made by the previous chair that there would be engagement between both groupings and planners for one last opportunity to allow for reconsideration. I suppose what I would say is that form of engagement for me has been the submission of an amended proposal and putting that back out to public consultation again and providing an opportunity for comment. But there's a proposal there. I think it's for members to form a view as to whether they feel the scheme needs further engagement or whether, in light of the comments, that appears to have been the expectation of the community group. Chair, I'll pass it over to you to give me a view on that.
Thank you, Melvin. So, members, you've heard Melvin's explanation. From the previous meeting, I know that, Councillor Sean McPeak.
Propose the deferral of the four items that's mentioned there. On the last one, Melvin, you rightly said it was agreed for engagement. I feel that the intensive engagement hasn't occurred yet with the community group. On the back of this letter, I propose that there does be further engagement with the community group and the Galway application.
Can you hear me now, Gavin? Disagree with the proposal. I think this is one of the complaints from planners is the deferral of applications and applications. There's a recommendation for approval here tonight. Is it okay to say, Melvin, that the letter that came in, is there any planning policy that has been struck that would require further amendment? Because if the officer's recommendation is for approval tonight, I believe we should go on ahead, because we're just kicking this further down the road, increasing workloads for an already oversubscribed planning team. So I would like to propose that we go ahead as normal, and whenever we get to the application, we'll decide there and then how to proceed. So I would propose that it stays on the agenda tonight and continues, and it should do. Thank you.
So we have a proposal to defer, and we have a proposal to keep it on the agenda. We need a seconder. Kevin McElvote seconds, so I will take that to a vote then.
Chair, I think I asked this at the last meeting as well, or made reference to it. Just for this application, I suppose for all future applications, what do we mean by mediation and what do we mean by addressing concerns and stuff, you know? Is that the role of the planning committee? I just want a clarification on that so we know where we stand for other applications as well.
Thank you, Melvin.
Yeah, so Councillor Cuthbert, on that point, the minutes of the meeting, whenever this application came up the last time, were recorded exactly as this. The chair said that before moving towards the recommendation, he wished to formally propose that to defer this application for re-engagement between both groupings and planners for one last opportunity to allow for reconsideration. I mean, absolutely, we're in the business to try and reach agreement between parties on all proposals where best we can. I've already said that I note the applicant's willingness to move towards a design solution, and going back to Councillor Kerr's point, the rationale and the policy tests against that are very clear in the case officer's report in terms of how we feel that that's now been met. So whether this will lead to any other outcome is another question, and we simply just won't know that until such times as if we do agree to meet with the parties, whether there's any further movement to be had there. I just can't say on that, Chair. But if it's the members' will to do that, I can certainly facilitate that discussion if so required.
Thank you, Chair. No, just I think that impact on community is one of the considerations for planning. So, and because it was voted on previously, it probably would be prudent to give the maximum effort to including that. And obviously, at some point, the project will be moved forward. But I think it will be the better for having extensively tried to do the engagement as well. But I don't think it's not going to stop the project, obviously, but it will be about trying to get the best foot forward for the start of the project. And hopefully that won't be too long or too much of a delay, notwithstanding the legitimate concerns with regard to extra workload and all of that. But I think it is a large community and a very vibrant community, so I think it would be worth the extra effort. Thank you, Chair.
So just a point of clarity from the solicitor, the proposal from Councillor Dan Kerr is to not defer the Galbally application, and Councillor Sean McPeak is proposing to accept all deferrals. So we'll take that to a vote.
Sorry, just bring the authority, the Sean Peaks and the Aldi, sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair, is Sean's proposal also including the Galbally on top of the requested deferrals from no problem.
So just to be clear what we're voting on Councillor Sean McPeak's proposal to accept all deferrals mentioned by Melvin, and the opposition to that proposal is Councillor Dan Kerr's not to accept all three.
The deferrals, sorry, Chair. The deferrals requested, that's okay. The only one I believe the agenda is the Galbally Community Centre. All the ones that have done it have requested for an office meeting. I have no issue with that. It's just Galbally, Chair, I think should be kept on the agenda. Does that clarify what I mean?
It does. Okay, then we'll take Councillor Dan Kerr's proposal first, and seconded by Councillor Kevin McElvode.
Yeah. Is this just, Chair, to not defer it, but will we be revisiting it later on in the meeting? That's what I'm asking.
If it's not deferred, we'll revisit. So we'll move to vote on Councillor Dan Kerr's proposal. Councillor Kyle Black? Against? Councillor Denise Johnson?
Against.
Councillor Jonathan Buchanan? Councillor Emer Kearney?
Against.
Councillor Clement Cuthbertson? Councillor Sean Clark? Councillor Mark Robinson? Councillor Donald McPeak? Councillor O'Kerry Martin's not here. Councillor Sean McPeak? Councillor Meada Graham?
Against.
Councillor Donna Mullen?
Against.
Councillor Dan Kerr? For. Councillor Deirdre Forsani?
Against.
Councillor Kevin McElvogue?
It's okay, no, just this.
Yes, that proposal falls. And we've got approval from Sean McPeak. So that moves us on to item 5.1 on the received planning applications. LAO 9 2021 0754F, development including a petrol station with 6 pumps, associated canopy and convenience shop, 2 retail units and 1 hot food unit with associated parking. Junction of Tamnamore Road and Cavan Road, Killyman for Jeremy Dobson, and that's up for approval. Proposed Councillor Clement Cuthbertson and seconded by Councillor Jonathan Buchanan. Item 5.2, LAO 9 2024 03. Sorry, that's not speaking yet. 5.3, LAO 9 2024 1187 F, farm dwelling and detached garage at lands approximately 145 metres, 19 Timacon Road, Kilray, for Mr. Nathaniel Caskey, and that's recommended for a refusal. Carla, presenting. Go ahead, Carla.
Thank you, Chair. This full application for a farm dwelling and garage raises no conflict with policy CTY 10 of PPS 21. The concern with the proposal is in respect of CTY 13 and 14, and it is considered that the proposed dwelling is too prominent on this roadside site. From the outset, the Planning Department expressed concerns to the agent relating to the visual prominence of the proposed dwelling on what is a fairly open site when viewed from the main road, and in particular when approaching from the southern approach of the Timaconway Road. The agent was asked to amend the design to bungalow level, but he opted not to adhere to this request, and what followed was the submission of a series of amendments which first reduced the front projection to single storey and reduced the length of the rear return. Following more discussions, the rear return was reduced to single storey, but this came at the added expense of the side annex being increased to 2-storey, adding to the prominence of the dwelling along the western road-facing elevation. The changes in the design from the original proposed design in October 2024 to the latest amendments provided in February 26 can be viewed on the PowerPoint. Jane? Yeah, so you can see there on the left-hand side the changes that have occurred with the last 3 sets of drawings. The rear return has been brought back considerably, but they've added to the side annex and created a two-storey element there. So the agent was informed by email back on the 18th of February that the latest amendment showing the increase of the side annex from single-storey to two-storey was unacceptable in terms of adding to the dwelling's overall scale, massing and prominence in the landscape. It was requested that this be reverted back to single-storey, however further amendments have not been forthcoming. In the absence of revised plans, the Planning Department has no option but to recommend refusal of this application for the reasons detailed in the case officer's report. Thank you.
Okay, members, so you've heard Carla's report. Melvin, you'd like to come in?
Yeah, just if I can maybe, Carla, if you wouldn't mind just clarifying, maybe from my understanding as well, the image of the changes in the design there, can we pop that back up again, please? Did I pick you up right when you said that the only offending part of the design now is the side extension over 2 stories? That's the only element? And the others, narrowing of the gable and the rear return drop down to single story, so we're down to that issue and we're stuck in that point? Okay. So that implies the ridge height of the main house is all okay? Okay. Look, Chair, I mean, we've had a number of these design issues in recent committees. I hope members have maybe found site visits useful when it comes to house type designs on sites, really, until you see that from various approaches, that the photographs help, but they don't provide the full picture. Particularly as we're only down to this small element now. My suggestion would be that perhaps members have a look at this in terms of the house type and how it sits in that part of the landscape, Chair.
Given your input, I would be happy enough to propose a site meeting. Second by Deirdre Forsani. Sorry. Okay. Item 5.4, LEO 9 2025-0058F, replacement dwelling and garage at 40 metres northeast of 22 Ballydermot Road, Balahi, for Mark Diamond, and that is up for refusal. We have a speaker on this, Una Given. Sorry, we'll let Carla presenting, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, under this application, it's proposed to replace what was once a dwelling with a large 2-storey dwelling on an off-site location to the immediate west of the existing dwelling. It is accepted that the building to be replaced exhibits the essential characteristics of a dwelling, and so there is a valid replacement opportunity under CTY 3 of PPS 21. It is also acknowledged that outline approval was granted for this replacement dwelling on the 29th of March 2024. This outline approval contained a 6.5 metre ridge height condition to ensure that any new dwelling would satisfactorily integrate into the local landscape. No siting condition was attached to the outline permission, but a drawing was submitted for information purposes showing the conceptual area for development. And that's included in the PowerPoint, Jane, if you maybe, I think it's maybe the 5th or 6th slide. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah, so that was a drawing. It wasn't stamped approved with the outline, but it was a drawing that was submitted with the outline, shown in the brighter green, or shown in the lighter green area, the generalised area for development of a dwelling. So policy CTY 3 of PPS 21 requires any replacement dwelling to be of a size that integrates into the surrounding landscape and to not have a visual impact that is significantly greater than the existing dwelling. The dwelling to be replaced is single story, small scale, and there is practically no visual appreciation of it from any public road. It is considered that the dwelling proposed, given its scale and massing in the location proposed, which is an elevated roadside site, will have a significantly greater visual impact than the dwelling that is being replaced. It would also fail to integrate into the local landscape. So I think it's important to bring to members' attention that the applicant has gained approval for another replacement dwelling adjacent to this site. Now, comparisons have been drawn between the level of visual impact associated with that approval and this current design. I would advise members of two things here. The adjacent approval was for the replacement of a dwelling which already occupied an elevated site and already had a visual presence. The visual impact of the proposed dwelling under that application was considered, yes, to be greater, but just not significantly greater than that of the existing dwelling. This approval cannot be used to justify the impact of the dwelling under consideration tonight. Secondly, the adjacent replacement application initially proposed the siting of that dwelling in a similar location as the current application. That siting was deemed unacceptable then and remains unacceptable now. It is effectively the most prominent location that can be chosen in this field and offers little in terms of integration qualities. Members should be aware that the Planning Department have engaged with the architect on numerous occasions in an attempt to get an acceptable scheme. I myself have also facilitated an office meeting with the architect and put forward suggestions in relation to siting, scale and massing. As it stands, and based on the design and siting before us at present, it is recommended that members refuse this application for the reasons set out in the Case Officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. So we have a speaker for the application in a given. You have
Good evening. Can you just confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, you can. Yes, we can. Inna.
Okay, I'll go ahead then.
Go ahead, Inna. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here in support of Mr. Diamond's planning application. And first of all, I would like to thank both the planning team and the planning committee for allowing me the opportunity to make this representation. I'm also accompanied online with Christopher Quinn, who is the architect, and we're both available for questions at the end. The Planning Department is concerned that the replacement dwelling will have a visual impact significantly greater than the existing dwelling and that it will not integrate into the landscape. The proposed dwelling is larger than the building that it is replacing. However, the proposal will also replace a number of existing outbuildings, and the new dwelling will also integrate with a number of agricultural outbuildings that will remain and will integrate with the adjacent dwelling. I wonder if the case officer wouldn't mind showing slide number 4 at this point. The Planning Department's concerns are views from Ballydermot Lane, and as you can see from the photograph on the right, the existing buildings are visible. The site has outline planning permission for a replacement dwelling already, and that is an outline, and the applicant is under no obligation to follow the conditions of the outline, and this proposal must be examined on its own merits and without prejudice. The part of the dwelling that will be most visible from Ballydermot Lane is the single-storey annex to the rear, and it will have no more of an impact than if the proposal was to have followed the conditions of the outline planning permission. The two-storey element will not appear noticeably higher than the single-storey annex in this view because it is sited at a lower level and the design has had regard to the natural contours of the land. I wonder would one of the officers mind now showing slide number 3. There's a full planning permission for 2-storey dwelling on the adjacent sites, and that's the diagrams you see and the photographs you see on the left-hand side of the image. In that case, the proposal was 3 times the size of the original house. The proposal in this case is smaller than the approval. It is less than twice the size of the combined total of the buildings that it is replacing, and it is on a less visible site. Then surely it would follow that the proposal is actually more acceptable than the neighbouring planning permission and should also receive planning permission. So I'd ask the planning committee that if the same planning principles are being applied to the current application by the same planning authority, then could you defend the case officer's recommendation to refuse considering the previous grant of planning permission on the neighbouring site? I would also add that the planning department did find the design itself acceptable as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that's my presentation, and myself and Chris are here if you've any questions, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Una. So, members, you've heard the reports. Melvin?
Yeah. So I just want clarification. Carla, apologies if I maybe missed this in your presentation, but there is an outline permission secured on this site. I think Una's just referred to it there. I'm assuming it had a ridge height restriction. What was that? Was it 6 metre or 5.5?
Can you hear me? There was a 6.5 metre ridge height condition on it. There was no sighting condition and the Swedish standard outlaid conditions in relation to landscaping, access, etc.
Thanks for that. Look, I hear a lot being made here about wanting to make a direct comparison between the other permission for the other replacement dwelling, but what I'm hearing is that we're not starting off from the same starting point. It strikes me that these two properties, at the minute, if one was to go out there, you'll notice one probably fairly quickly. Would I be right in saying that, Carla? And the other one, in terms of public interest, has hardly any visibility at all. So, would that be the case, Carla? Yeah.
Yes, so I was hoping to get that across in my presentation, Melvin. Yeah. So the adjacent full approval for the replacement, we did acknowledge that the dwelling that was approved would have a greater visual impact, but because the house that it was replacing already had considerable visual impact due to its, its elevation from the public road, that's how we got over that criteria of CTY3. We said yes, it was greater in terms of visual impact, but not significantly greater. Now, looking at the dwelling to be replaced under this current application, it's not that it can't be seen. There is, as Una pointed out in her presentation, you might be able to see the roof of it from Ballydermot Lane, very little of it from Ballydermot Road. So its visual presence at the minute is very limited. What is proposed here is tipping over into significantly greater visual impact, and that's why we don't think that adjacent approval can be used to justify approval of this house on this site.
Yeah, that's what I suspected, and in answer to the question whether this decision could be defended, I think that gives you the answer. It could be defended because we're not looking at two identical scenarios, and I think there's been careful thought put into how the other decision was made. Carla, am I right in saying that there's been a suggestion made to relocate this within the current red line of the site to an acceptable position to us, and has that been accepted? Or obviously it hasn't, but what's been the response to that?
As I alluded to there, I had facilitated a meeting with the architect here in the council offices some time ago, because our job is to try and facilitate a development that is acceptable and policy compliant. So we wanted to work with him. One of the suggestions was that the dwelling be moved more so sort of in the footprint of the dwelling to be replaced, so it would be more tightly grouped with those existing buildings. From memory, they did move it over slightly, but not to the extent that we were looking. So I suppose it is an option. Also, I just want to pick up on something that Una had said in her presentation there. And I think she did mention it in her supporting statement during the processing of the application, that there would be several outbuildings knocked down, you know, as part of this overall scheme as well. So if that's the case, there is room, there's ample room to site the dwelling in that area, you know, in a more acceptable location to us, if there's other buildings that are going to be removed. So there maybe is a siting solution that would accommodate this. But, you know, I'm very mindful as well that the previous application that was approved, they had wanted to site the dwelling in a similar location to where this one is sited, and we resisted that. So why would we not resist the same siting for this one? Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Councillor Sean McPeak.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for the report, Carla, and the speakers online and the questions answered. But there's a lot of discussion around, you know, visual impact, possible solutions on site, etc. So I propose, Chair, that we do a site meeting out in this, because it's, to me, that's where it really stands. That's where the problems seem to be arising, and unless you're on site, you can't fully appreciate what we're talking about. So.
Thank you, Councillor McPeak. So, proposal, site meeting, I'll second. I'll second that. Thank you. No, that's okay. So, yeah. Have you a point to make, Donna? Online?
Oh, sorry, Chair, you seconded. I was going to come in and second that. I think a site visit would be
Okay.
important here as well. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 5.5, LA09, 2025-0856F, combined heating and power unit, warehousing unit to house specific plant machinery to the rear and additional warehousing unit to the north for the OS Doors facility at 106 Sierra Road, the Moy, 4.3 kilometres from Egglestown, respectively, for ONS Doors. And the item is up for approval. Proposed, Councillor Sean Clark. Sorry, Clement Cuthbertson.
I've received some correspondence from people in the community that would be opposed to this, so I'm going to declare an interest in it.
Chair,
For Sani, yeah.
happy to second. I had a check through. There's only one objection in the paperwork connected with this. And I had a look at, about what the impacts potentially could be, etc. But I particularly paid attention to whether there were letters of objection, and there's literally just one. So on that basis, I will second it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so that's been approved. Item 5.6, LA09, 2025-0903, new vehicular access at Lands, Carn Lock Road, Primroy for Lockdo Aggregates and Concrete Limited, and that's up for an approval. Councillor Clark. Propose. Second, Councillor Dan Kerr. Thank you. Item 5.7, LA09 2025-1178F. Extension to building supplies business for storage of timber at 78 Kilmascally Road, Dungannon for Quinn Building Supplies, and that's up for approval. Councillor Dan Kerr, approve.
Second, Chair.
Councillor Denise Johnson, second. That's approved. 5.8, LA09 2025-12190. Housing development at site immediately west and adjacent to Derna Cottages, Coal Island for Mr. Malachy McElvanna. Propose. Proposed, Councillor Dan Kerr. Second, Councillor Kevin McElvogue. Item 5.9, LA09 2025-1283F. Residential development and associated ancillary works at lands immediately west of 21 Fintner Road, Clogher for New Park Homes and Phelan. You have an item on the addendum.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Chair, as you say, this is an application for a housing development of 21 dwellings inside the settlement limits for Clogher. The proposal is for 8 pairs of semi-detached dwellings, 2 detached and a terrace of 3 dwellings. The houses are all 2-storey and sited similar to a previous permission on the site. Some development has been carried out on the site and is left unfinished. This proposal has been assessed against all relevant policies and is considered acceptable. The application is being presented to the committee tonight as there had been an objection in relation to impacts on historic fabric. Historic Environment Division have considered that, and as the site has been widely disturbed, they consider any fabric has been lost and do not raise any concerns. Chair and members, there was a late objection received on this, and you have that in your pack this evening. It was received from 18 Fintner Road in relation to land ownership. The objection refers to a portion of ground at the south of the site. So on the bottom left-hand image on the screen, it's the left-hand side of that is the area that they're referring to. The objector is claiming that they are the owners of that portion of land. The agent was asked to clarify ownership and has submitted additional information and an assertion that they have properly completed the land ownership declaration for the site and they do not need to notify any other parties about the proposal. As I said, additional information is in the addendum and it shows the folios for the application site and the adjacent land, as well as an overlay showing the 2 folios together. Guidance in our Development Management Practice Note 16 does not deal with disputes about ownership. However, it advises the Council to take into account any representations received from those with a legal interest and notify them of the decision. Chair, if I can just read out what the objector has said, and this was a submission that came in quite late in the day. It's in the pack. Chair, members in the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. Before outlining our comments, we wish to acknowledge that our representations have been submitted at a late stage in the process. Although the application has been under consideration for some time, it was only upon our detailed review of the private streets drawings as the application was going before the committee meeting that we became aware that part of our land had been included within the proposed visibility displays. Given the significance of this issue, we considered it important to bring it to members' attention before a decision is made. We also wish to make it clear from the outset that I do not object to the proposed housing development. Our concerns relate solely to the accuracy of the application documentation and the implications this may have for the implementation of the proposed private streets. Having reviewed the private streets drawings submitted with the application, we note that part of the required visibility displays extends across the frontage of my property. The drawings identify a small area of land within our ownership, shaded red, which appears to be intended for transfer to the Department for Infrastructure under the Private Streets Northern Ireland Order. As members will appreciate, the transfer of land under the Private Streets Order requires the application to have the necessary legal control over the land, the applicant to have the necessary legal control over that land. However, the planning application form published on the 12th of December 2025 includes Certificate A, which declares that the applicant is in actual possession of every part of the land to which the application relates. This declaration is incorrect because the area required for the visibility displays forms part of our property. It is third-party land, and we have never given the applicant permission to use or transfer it. Furthermore, we have never received any formal notice from the applicant or landowner advising me of an intention to enter into a private streets agreement with DFI that would affect my land, nor has anyone approached us, either before or after the submission of the application, to discuss the use or transfer of any part of our property. To substantiate our ownership, we have enclosed a copy of my land registry title, which clearly shows the extent of our property. Our concern is therefore not with the principle of the development, but whether the committee and DFI have been provided with complete and accurate information regarding land ownership and control. Specifically, we would ask whether DFI, in assessing the private streets proposal, has been made aware that the proposed visibility displays are not entirely within the applicant's ownership or control. If this has not been disclosed, it may affect DFI's assessment and could prejudice the future ability to complete the necessary land transfer required for the adoption of the private streets should planning permission be granted. In those circumstances, we respectfully ask the committee to satisfy itself that the application has been accompanied by the correct ownership certificate, that all statutory notification requirements relating to third-party land have been complied with, and that DFI has been made fully aware that the applicant does not have ownership or control of all of the land shown within the private streets drawings. We believe it is important that these matters are clarified before the application is determined. Thank you for your time and consideration. Regards, Mr. Justin and Mrs. Maid McCaughey, and their details there for communication are provided. So, Chair, as you can see, the folio map they have provided is the same as was provided by the landowner and the applicant. So they have shown on the pack that they have taken account of the land ownership and the folio, and they have transposed that onto a drawing there to show how they feel that the land ownership has not been, is within their control and it's not a third party's lands. Chair and members, just to be aware, the objector in this case was notified about this application through the neighbour notification process. They have registered an objection and will be notified of any decision. You're advised that at the end of this of the report, there are a number of conditions that are set out. These are called negative conditions and are proposed that require the access and road improvements to be carried out before any further development takes place. If the applicant does not own the land and carries out development without providing the improvements, they will be in breach of planning and may be subject to enforcement action. If the applicant carries out the development on someone else's land without their consent, this is a civil matter between the parties. Chair and members, as I said, the development management practice note advises that council should take account of any representations that are received and notify anyone of the decision. That will happen in this case. The issues that are raised there are a civil matter. Whether or not the land ownership is with the objector or with the applicant here, we have already looked at all of those matters. The applicant has been asked to confirm ownership, which is what we would generally do if there is a challenge to their ownership, and that has been done. They have said, yes, we are quite happy. We have properly completed the Certificate A and are in control of all the land. Chair and members, because of that, the application is recommended for approval this evening with those conditions that require that work to be carried out prior to any further works on site. Thank you.
Thank you, Phelim. So, members, you've heard Phelim's addendum. Over to the floor. Proposed, Councillor Kevin McElvogue. Seconded, Councillor Kerr. 5.10, LA09 2025-1322 F. Dwelling and domestic garage at 50 metres northeast of 66 Cookstown Road, Ferroy Lane, Garland, Dungannon for Raymond McCluskey, and it's up for approval. Opposed, Councillor McElvogue, and seconded, Councillor Kerr. Item 5.1, LA09 2026-01600. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. 511, LA09 2026-0150F. Variation of condition 12 of LAO 9-2020-0281F at lands approximately 200 southwest of Edendork Primary School, 181 Coal Island Road, Dungannon, for trustees of Edendork Primary School approve. Proposed Councillor Deirdre Forsani, seconded Councillor Dan Kerr. Item 5.12, LAO 9-2026-01600, site for dwelling at Lisnamuck Road, Magherafelt, for Mr. James Hughes, and Carla's presenting.
Thanks, Chair. This outline application for a site for dwelling was submitted without any statement of case indicating which policy under PPS 21 should be applied in the assessment. This was subsequently requested, and the applicant suggested that the proposal be considered as an infill dwelling under policy CTY 8, but also made reference to policy CTY 2A, which deals with dwellings in an existing cluster of development. The application has therefore been assessed under both policies. The cluster policy directs that the site must lie outside of a farm and the cluster of development must consist of 4 or more buildings. The site is outside of a farm, but it is considered that the actual cluster of development is confined to the housing development of 14 dwellings located to the southeast of the site. There is a derelict dwelling to the northwest of the site, but it is not considered as part of the cluster, as it is too far removed from the other dwellings, and it does not appear within a group of buildings that can be read together. It is arguable whether the proposed site is associated with a crossroads, which is another criteria under the cluster policy. A road junction is located to the northeast of the site, but one of these roads is a laneway to other dwellings opposed to a public road. There are no focal points associated with the site which can be used in the assessment for CTY 2A. Most notably, the site is not bounded on at least 2 sides with development in the cluster. As I've already said, we do not accept the derelict dwelling to the northwest as being within the cluster, so effectively the site is only bound on one side by development, which is the housing development. The site is large in size, and the distance between the derelict dwelling and the gable of number 10 St Patrick's Terrace measures over 160 metres. The site offers little in terms of enclosure, and the addition of a dwelling on this site would not round off or consolidate the existing cluster. A dwelling on this site would alter the character of the surrounding area and visually intrude into the open countryside. For these reasons, it's not accepted that there is a valid CTY 2A case for a dwelling on this site. In terms of an infill opportunity, it is considered that the size of the site is not reflective of what is considered a small gap site based on plot sizes along the Lisnamuck Road. The site could take easily in excess of 2 dwellings, and the site currently acts as a visual break between the housing development and the derelict dwelling. For these reasons, it is not accepted that there is an infill opportunity under CTY 8. Concerns are also there about the integration qualities of the site and the impact the development of this site would have on rural character. So for these reasons, we consider there to be conflict with policies CTY 13 and 14. And as the proposal was deemed unacceptable in principle, we didn't ask for any biodiversity information. So it's difficult to say that there's compliance with policy NH5 of PPS 2. It is therefore recommended that members refuse this application tonight for the detailed reasons set out in the case officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. So members, you've heard the report. So members, you've heard the report. Councillor D. Forsani.
Propose to accept the recommendation.
And seconder Sean Clark. Yeah. To defer, yeah. 514 LEO 9 2026 0306 F, replacement dwelling and carport at 18 Coolrays Road, Cookstown for Mr. and Mrs. McKenna, and that's up for approval. I'll accept the approval, propose the approval. Seconded, Councillor Donald McPeak. Item 5.15, LEO 9 2026 0316 F, change of house type on plots 8, 9, 14, 61, 62, 63 and 66 at Annaher Road, Coal Island for the Fianna Clubhouse for Plum Avenue Company Limited, and it's up for approval. Proposed Councillor D. Versani and seconded Councillor Dan Kerr. Item 5.16 has been deferred yet?
Yes.
Yeah. 5.17 LEO 9 2026 0338 F, dwelling at lands approximately 25 metres east of 22 Blackrock Road, Cookstown for Mr. Matt Mallon, and that's recommended for approval. Approved, Councillor Sean Clark.
Chair,
Yes.
Sappin, Chair.
Councillor Mullen. Where is she at?
Yes, Chair.
Yes. Go ahead, Donna.
Seconding the proposal, Chair.
Seconded by Councillor Donovan. Thank you. Item 518. Item 518. LAO 9 2026 0477 F, 2 modular units for 50 preschool children at 190 Ballygolly Road, Dungannon for Mrs. Tanya Burke, and that's recommended for approval. Proposed Councillor Kevin McElvogue, seconded Councillor D. Versani. Thank you. Item 5.19, LAO 9 2026 0552 F, variation of condition 4 of LAO 9 2018, 1384 F, at site on Gorgonis Road adjacent to Sportsfield and occupied by existing community centre for Gaelscoil Uninil, and that's recommended for approval. Councillor Carney, propose.
Propose, Chair.
Proposed Councillor Carney, seconded Councillor Dan Kerr. Members, we're just going to convene a 5-minute comfort break.
Before we do that, go back to 518. I believe it's on council plan, just so we've declared an interest.
Sorry folks, just before we convene our comfort break, I've just been told here that,
Well, that feeling, just explain that.
sorry, I'll just pass you over to Phelim here to explain technicality. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, thank you. It's just in relation to item 518, the 2 modular units, accommodation for 50 preschool children at 190 Ballygolly Road, Dungannon for Miss Tanya Burke. Just members, you'll be aware in the executive summary, it does set out that the council own that property, so it may be prudent that everyone just declares an interest. Thank you.
Proposed Councillor Sean McPeak, seconded Councillor Deirdre Versani. Okay, we'll convene a 5-minute comfort break. Thank you. Okay, are we all ready?
So we're now at 6.1.
If I could just remind members that if, before speaking, if you could wait till your mic goes red, thank you. So we'll now move on to item number 6, receive deferred applications. 6.1, LA09 2018 0565F, housing development consisting of 36 dwellings, services and infrastructure at lands 7 Listenestrain Heights, Coal Island for McVoy Rowan Pension Fund, and that's recommended for an approval. Councillor Emer Kearney.
Chair, I just have a question for the officer. I have been following this application on the portal, and there's a letter from DFI stating that there's an established water course near number 4 Listenestrain, and I just want a bit of clarity from the officer that the developer must now seek consent from DFI for works under Schedule 6. Has that been confirmed?
Emma.
Unless you know. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Kearney. The agent has had a meeting with ourselves and Rivers Agency, and everything has now been done in accordance with that. The agent is here with us now to confirm if that's gone through Schedule 6, but it's definitely been applied for from that meeting, so could we ask maybe the agent for confirmation if that was okay? Is that right, Jim? Yeah, so that has been done then, yes. Is that okay, Councillor?
Yes, so it had, the Schedule 6 has been applied for.
And have you received it, Jim, or just been applied for? Yeah, it's been applied for on behalf of Sheehy Consultant, but as I say, we did have a meeting with Rivers and they were content that that was in, that their response now is positive, knowing that. Is that okay? Yeah. Sorry, we could just confirm there, Councillor, if you can still hear me, that there had been one, because the application, as you can see, is 2018, it has, it ran out of date, so they have applied there for it, and it's in the process. Thank you.
So that's recommended for an approval?
Yes, it is, yes, Councillor.
So that's recommended for an approval?
Happy to approve, Chair.
Propose Councillor Denise Johnson. We need a seconder. I'll second. Sorry, Dan. Councillor Dan Kerr.
Yeah, Chair, I'd just like to outline my opposition to that application. Thanks, Chair.
Item 6.2, LA09 2023 119F, replacement dwelling at 40 metres southwest of 38 Listenemuck Road, Tobermore for Mr. Andrew Hopper, and it's recommended as a refusal. Carla?
Thank you, Chair. This full application for a replacement dwelling was first before members at April 24 committee with a recommendation to refuse. It was considered contrary to policy CTY 1 and 3 in that the building to be replaced failed to exhibit the essential characteristics of a dwelling. Members agreed to defer the application for an office meeting, which was facilitated on the 22nd of April 24. Supporting information by way of a Griffiths valuation map and record, Census information and photos were submitted in advance of the office meeting. After reassessing the proposal, it was brought back before members in March 2026 Planning Committee with a recommendation to refuse, and an additional refusal reason was added in respect of PPS 2. Members agreed then to defer the application for a site visit, which was facilitated on the 27th of March 26 and was attended by councillors Sean McPeak, Donald McPeak and Denise Johnson. Notable from the members' site visit was internal structural evidence that the building was potentially designed for the purposes of agriculture. An additional objection has been received since this application was last deferred. It is a rebuttal of the information provided by the agent to make a case that the building was a dwelling. It is the objector's view that parapet walls are not solely features of historic dwellings, but can be features of outbuildings too. It is also the objector's view that the thickness of a wall does not prove with certainty that a building was either a dwelling or an outbuilding, and the size of a window or door opening cannot be taken as proven the presence of a dwelling. Furthermore, the objector contends that reliance on Griffith's valuation is weak and not definitive legal proof that someone lived in a building. It is the opinion of the Planning Department that there is merit in what the objector is saying, and there is indeed doubt as to whether this building was at any point a dwelling. I want to remind members of the planning history associated with this site, as this is a material consideration. Approval was granted in 2019 for the conversion of this redundant building to a dwelling. This has since expired. Notably, that application was initially submitted as a replacement application, but was recommended for refusal before the applicant then amended the proposal to convert the redundant building, which he can do and is assessed under a completely different policy. There was also an older permission for the conversion of this building. That was a application submitted back in 2009. In 2019, there was a variation of condition application submitted to remove the need to provide a forward sight distance. This was refused by members in October 2020 due to road safety concerns. Overturning the recommendation to refuse this application must be considered with caution. The planning history on this site would indicate that the building has never been considered as a dwelling. Also, DFI Roads have advised the Planning Department that the current access arrangements are substandard and splays of 2.4 by 80 and an 80 metre forward sight distance are recommended. However, if a replacement dwelling is approved, this puts no requirement on the applicant to improve visibility when accessing onto the public road. Based on the planning history, the site inspection, the recommendation remains to refuse this application for the reasons set out in the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Members, you've heard Carla's report. Thank you, Carla. You've heard members. You've heard Carla's report. Councillor Kyle Black.
Thank you, Chair. There's obviously a differing of views in terms of the historical use of this building. I know that there's been some information provided in terms of the Griffiths valuation by the agent as well. I wasn't able to attend the site visit, unfortunately due to work commitments, but I know there were some other members that were able to be there. And just I would be quite keen to hear if there was any feedback from those that have seen it in person with regards to any characteristics that the building may display that would support this being a dwelling in a historical context. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. So anyone that attended may want to offer some comments on that. Councillor Donald McPeak.
It looked more like an agricultural building to me, I'll be honest with you, when I attended the site visit.
Melvin?
Yeah, I think I recall dealing with one of the very first applications out here. I don't know how many years ago it was now. And there's been a consistency right throughout, members, that this hasn't been a dwelling. And I think the applicants, I think it's always been the same owner, Carla, Mr. Hopper, as I recall through the years, pretty sure. His own admission to change it to convert a building into a dwelling, I think tells you something around the fact that there's been an acceptance there, that that's the only way to get permission. Of course, the rub is, to do that, he has to improve the access, and that's one of the key issues with this application. So in the interest of consistency alone, members, I would encourage you not to deviate from our very careful assessment over the years on this, and that this hasn't been a dwelling and shouldn't be afforded the benefit of a permission for a replacement dwelling. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Versani?
Propose to accept the recommendation.
Second, yep.
Item 6.3, LAO 9 2024-0046F, dwelling and detached garage at rear of 51 Annaghmore Road, Castle Dawson, for A. Wilson, and it's recommended for approval.
Collie, have you representation? I can ask Collie to just say a few words.
Collie, a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just a bit of a recap for members in this one. The application was presented to members in May with a recommendation to approve. After some speakers expressed opposition, that was deferred for member site visit, and that took place in May 26. The application is again presented to members with a recommendation to approve, as it is felt that the proposal complies with policy CTY 2A. The contention was that the policy was not compliant with CTY 2A because it would have an adverse impact on residential amenity. It is still the view of officers that the proposal will not have an adverse impact on residential amenity for the following reasons. Separation distances of the proposed dwelling and the existing dwellings are considered to be adequate and in line with guidance. The main living quarters of the proposed dwelling are located to the rear of the property and not facing the existing properties. Planting has been proposed which will augment existing planting and aid screening between both dwellings. Members viewed the site from both the rear garden of one of the objectors' properties and from on the site itself. The site visit concluded with a request that the agent submit a sectional drawing showing the proposed dwelling in relation to the existing dwellings. This has been submitted and is displayed on the screen for members' consideration. The sectional drawing shows that there will be a cut into the slope of the site by approximately just over 1 metre. And members should also be aware that a late objection has been received and is attached to the addendum for members' consideration. No real new issues were raised in that late objection, with the main issue still being the issue of residential amenity, which has been assessed in the last 2 deferred case officer reports. Issues relating to planting been implemented and retained can be addressed via conditions and are included in conditions on the report. And there's issues about the accuracy of levels, although no alternative levels have been provided. So therefore, we accept the levels which have been provided. So members therefore recommend to approve this application subject to the conditions following on from the member site visit. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, Collie.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, that's the wrong reference number on that slide there, sorry.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, it should be 2024-0046.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Sean McPeak.
I got a quick glimpse on the addendum there when we come in, but I can't find it now when I want to find it. But essentially, the planting out in sight that day, there was, from memory, there was low hedge, but there was quite a number of mature birch trees along it. And I was just wondering, I think this is what the applicant, or sorry, the objector was looking for, was sort of the continuation of them birch trees on round. Can we do that? Colin, can we put that stipulation on, that that's the type of planting rather than a low-level hedge? It's not going to have major impact.
Yeah, well, thanks, Chair. There is a condition, I'm not too sure of the numbers of the conditions, but there are two conditions on the report. One of them states that all planting shall be carried out in accordance with the drawing. The drawings have been annotated by the agent there. They're handwritten, you can see it, alternate Irish beach down at the corner. And then I also have a condition on stating that all existing planting shall be retained, and any trees that are removed has to be cleared in writing through the council. So those are pretty standard conditions that would go on any application that's dependent on planting.
Can we stipulate, Colin, that that type of planting is put in? You know, what's there, the mature trees, is a few more than put in to help screen? Is that what's in the condition?
Proposed planting you're on about, Sean? The proposed planting, the condition says all proposed planting shall be indicated on the stamped approved drawing, which is uploaded to the portal on the 1st of April. So that drawing there, essentially. It says down there, I think it's ash and beech, and it hasn't transferred that well onto that drawing, but it does say 1.8 metres on that drawing. It hasn't transferred too well across into the slide there. So the condition does say that it has to be carried out in accordance with that drawing. If you want to delegate it to us to tighten the condition up to really specify that type, and we can do that.
Sorry, 1.8 is. I would like to see that. I'm sorry, too many we picks about here. No, just to include in that, if that could be, you know, a few more of them size of trees taken around the corner of the site there to help screen. You know, I think that's what the letter is essentially meaning. The 1.8 isn't that high, like, if it could be made a bit okay.
No, it was just asked, Colin, is that conditions 3 and 4 are associated with that? Would that be the...
Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, it's conditions 3 and 4. Sorry, I just don't have the report in front of me, but I'll see them on the screen here now. And I knew they were on it, just didn't know the numbers. It's conditions 3 and 4.
Yeah, I remember that being discussed today, and that's why I wanted to ask. So that's okay, thank you.
Melvin? That's okay, thank you. I just want to be what we're conditioning and where. On the section, Colin, that you had up a wee minute ago, there was reference to a 2.4 high existing, I'm sure this is Leylandii hedge. Yeah, if you go back to that one again, that's the pencil drawing. Is that the boundary that we're talking about, needing heavy standard trees along, Councillor McPeak, or which one is that? That's someone that backs onto or separates number 51, which assumes the objector's house.
Councillor McPeak.
It was trees on the applicant side, from memory, Colin, wasn't it? You know, the birch trees, and if there was a few more of them, I think that's all the objector's looking for, you know, right round the corner.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So that Yolandi hedge there, that section is showing number 51, which is actually the other objector's house, not the one we were in. So the Yolandi hedge is at the back of that site. The site we were in, which is the site more kind of further back there, the planting around that there's existing planting there, and it'll be augmented with the 1.8 metre beech. I can tighten that condition up if you would like to specify those kind of root ball. You put in even like root ball trees so that they're maybe in a bit higher. If I'm not sure, can we do that, Melvin? Can we just change the condition if we're given? Yeah. I mean, if it's reasonable, I think it probably is reasonable. So.
I believe so. There used to be conditions we would have attached referring to trees of heavy standard and all this, but I'd rather be a wee bit more precise on that. The question we've got to ask ourselves is it reasonable to force the applicant to submit or to plant heavy standard trees? There's lots of costs involved in that, and I think we need to acknowledge that. But if Councillor McPeak, if you're happy enough, Colin, you suggested sort of root ball type species trees in there, those will have a wee bit of growth already. But that's okay. And are we talking about along, on that drawing there, which boundary are we talking about? Is it the northern? Which, I think it's easier to say it on the previous plan, sorry, if you go back to that. Yeah, where are we imposing the condition on? Here? There? Right, okay. That's okay, I think that's appropriate, we can do that, yeah. Okay, so we're approving with that suggested condition, is that?
So we're approving with the suggested condition.
Has that already been proposed and seconded?
Proposed by Councillor Sean McPeak and seconded by Councillor Donald McPeak. Thank you. Item 6.4, LAO 9 2024-0049F, retention of extension of agricultural yard and associated development, paddock at lands and immediately west of 101 Dungannon Road, Cookstown, for Niall Bell, and that's up for approval. Proposed Councillor Sean Clark and seconded Councillor Deirdre Forsani. Item 6.5, LAO 9 2024-0699O, site for dwelling and domestic garage at land approximately 95 metres east of 81 Mullockboy Road, Bly, for Mr. Brendan Scullion, and that's recommended for approval. Proposed Councillor Donald McPeak, seconded Councillor Sean McPeak. Item 6.6, LAO 9 2024-0963F. Sorry, yep, that's been deferred, sorry. 6.7, LAO 9 2024-1068O, off-site replacement dwelling and domestic garage, retention of ex-dwelling as agricultural store at land approximately 340 metres southwest of 21 Foggart Road, Clogher, for Gareth McKenna, and that's recommended as an approval. Councillor D. Forsani, approve. And seconded Councillor Kevin McElvogue. Approved. 6.8, LAO 9 2024-12770, 1.5 storey detached off-site replacement dwelling, access at lands to 48 Legilly Road, Tyan, Dungannon, for Mr. Stephen Haggerty, and that's recommended for approval. Proposed Councillor Kevin McElvogue, seconded Councillor Deirdre Forsani. Item 6.9, LAO 9 2024-1380F, machinery and animal feed store at approximately 180 metres northeast of 113 Tulna Cross Road, Cookstown, for Mr. Damien and Mark McBride, recommended as an approval.
Proposed, Chair.
Proposed Councillor Donna Mullen. Okay.
No.
Sorry, your mic wasn't on the show.
Oh, sorry, wasn't? Right.
No,
I wasn't beside it. No, I just wanted to declare an interest, so to keep everything right. But I want to say something following the decision.
And I'll second that. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. No, the reason why I was declared an interest is that I had a very slight involvement because I put in a letter to clarify something to the planners, right? And I actually farmed that land for 40 years, right? And it was a part of a farm which there was 2 plots on. One plot contained the dwelling house, the farm buildings and all the rest of it, and this plot contained no buildings whatsoever. And the hurtful thing about it is that I think that farmers are getting a rough end of the stick in that you need to farm 5 years before you're entitled to make an application. Now, there's nowhere else I think if you're building a garage, you could build it in the morning, or you could apply for it in the morning. If you're building someone else, you could apply for it in the morning. That's an awful obstacle, because things were suggested that these people could take their machinery 4 miles to their home garage. Don't know what they're going to do with the cattle or sheep. It's totally wrong that you think that people can't start somewhere, and the somewhere is they bought a bit of land, and there shouldn't be that many obstacles in the way of putting a shed or whatever it is on it.
Thank you for that, Sean. We'll move on now to 6.8, LAO 9 2024 12770. Sorry. 610, sorry. 610, LAO 9 2024 14010, site and dwelling and domestic garage at 85 metres southwest of 53A Ranahan Road, Maghera, for Paul Convery, and that's recommended for a refusal. Carla?
Thank you, Chair. So this outline application for a dwelling is being applied for as an infill. In considering policy CTY 8, it is noted that the policy makes it clear that ribbon development in the countryside is not acceptable. The policy does, however, allow for the infilling of a small gap site in a substantial and continuously built up frontage in specific circumstances. This is an exception within the policy. The small gap site must be sufficient only to accommodate up to a maximum of 2 dwellings, and it must respect the existing development pattern along the frontage in terms of size, scale, siting and plot size, and meet other planning and environmental criteria. Each case must be treated on its own merits, and having visited the site, it is my opinion that the built development at this location can be considered as presenting a substantial and built-up frontage for the purposes of the policy, but the size of the gap under consideration, which actually constitutes 2 fields and measures 140 metres, provides a visual break between the dwellings to the west and the dwellings to the east. For members' information, and in order to help them make a decision, the plot frontage of the existing dwellings along the road is as follows. So number 46 measures 44 metres, number 50A measures 27, number 50 measures 34, and number 52 measures 69. The application site measures 32, and the adjacent field measuring 78, the field to the right of it. So that's the total gap. Whilst members may consider the application site as being of a similar size frontage to the existing dwelling, it's very evident on the ground that it does clearly provide a visual relief between the development to the west and that to the east. If the gap were to be developed in its entirety, then there would be a negative impact on rural character of this area, as its consolidation with the existing development on both sides of the road would lead to a suburbanised build-up, which policy CTY 14 aims to prevent, as well as extending an existing ribbon of development along this section of the road. It is therefore recommended that members refuse this application for the reasons detailed in the case officer's report. But before I finish, included on the slide, I know we have a speaker coming on. I think Chris Cassidy is going to speak. Chris had asked that a graphic be put on the slide to aid his presentation. So I think it's the next one, Jane. Aye, that's it. Yeah. So that is a graphic that Chris wants to use in his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. So we have a speaker for the application, Chris Cassidy. Chris, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Gib. Hearing members, I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant for this application. Following the referral, we welcome the additional consideration given by Carla. However, we respectfully disagree with the continued recommendation to refuse. The key point for members is the principle of built-up frontage is no longer disputed. Carla has confirmed within her report the built-up development of this location be considered as presenting as a substantial and continuous built-up frontage. This statement is important. It confirms that this is not an isolated dwelling in the countryside and that the first fundamental test of CTY 8 has been met. The site between the established group of buildings is 52, 50 and 50A, 54 and 46 to the east, with additional established dwellings directly opposite. The remaining consideration is where the proposal respects the existing pattern of development. Carla has provided the existing frontages 44, 27, 34 and 69 respectively. The application site measures 62 metres. Therefore, the proposal is not excessive or out of character. It sits comfortably within the established range of plot sizes already present along this section of River Flanagan Road. Indeed, the proposed site frontage is similar to number 52, which forms part of this very frontage and is identical to the site opposite. The concern raised that the wider gap creates a visual break and the development would lead to suburban build-up. We respectfully disagree. The proposed dwelling has been designed and positioned to reflect existing road pattern. The proposed footprint directly reflects the existing dwellings in the immediate area. Including the dwelling opposite the site is not characteristic by small suburban plots. It's characteristic by detached rural dwellings, generous individual plots, separation distances between buildings, mature outside boundaries, and dwellings positioned within the landscape settings. The proposal follows this exact pattern. It does not introduce a new character. It replicates the character that already exists. There is no planning assessment except that the dwelling would not be overly prominent. The site benefits from existing vegetation. The proposal visually integrates, and it doesn't rely on new landscaping. These conclusions demonstrate that the proposal will not harm rural character. The purpose of CTY 8 is to prevent harmful urban development, but also to recognise its appropriate infill opportunities. In this case, officers accept the substantial continuous build-up. There is no objections to DFI roads, no ecology objections, no flooding, or no third-party objections. The aerial image on site of the two houses superimposed, I believe, gives a very good impression as to how two houses just fit on this site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. So, members, you have heard the report, and Chris. Melvin.
Thanks, Chair. There's clearly lots of development here. Looking at the image, I can see dwellings set back a wee bit. What looks like driveways extend to the road. A gap which looks significantly large in my view. And it's quite tricky to put an average plot size because there's a mixture of plot sizes in that area. Initial reaction is I personally think members would probably benefit from a visit if we're minded to check that out and establish that a bit further. Carla, did I pick you up right? And are we saying not all of these share a common frontage? Is it number 50A is the one that's set back, or does it have a? Apologies, you maybe covered that.
Carla.
Thank you. From memory now, you put me on the spot. No, I think 50A does have a frontage, although it might be cited gable on, if you know what I mean. Yes, there is development to the east and the west, but it's when you're on the ground that you only get the appreciation of the visual break that these two fields give between 50A and 56. Jane, if you maybe go, did I include a photo? Yeah. So where am I at here? So the photo to the right is sort of looking towards the west, okay? And if you're on that road there, travelling in a westerly direction, you can't see the other houses at the other side, and again going the opposite direction towards the east, you can't get a visual appreciation of the Mather. So whilst we can compare plot sizes and average sizes of plots and all the rest, it's actually when you're on the ground, those two fields, in my opinion, don't represent a small gap. Yes, there's a substantial built-up frontage numerically in terms of buildings, but those two fields are of such a size that they create a visual break and visual relief between the development to the east and the west. And maybe a member's site visit is probably the best route to go down for members to actually see that on the ground. Like, it's very easy to look at a bird's eye view of a plan and think, oh, there's development to the east and there's development to the west and this is like a natural infill. But it's when you're on the ground, and if that gap is of such a size that it's creating a visual break, well then maybe it's not an acceptable infill, but members might benefit from a site visit.
Thank you very much, Carla. I would be happy enough to... Thank you, Carla. I'd be happy to propose a site visit. Councillor Kyle Black.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second that. Thank you.
Thank you. So, site visit.
6:12, I think. 6:11. Sorry, what was that? That was 6:11, so we're 6:12.
Item 6.12.
Sorry, which? Hold on.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, it is 6.
Sorry. 611. LAO 9 2025 0260. Item 611, LAO 9 2025 0260 site for infill dwelling and domestic garage, 16 Drumhubbard Road, Dungannon, for Mr. James Daniel Wilson, and that's recommended as an approval. Proposed, Councillor Dan Kerr. Second, Councillor Denise Johnson. Thank you. Approved. Item 6.12, LAO 9 2025 0643F, raised patio and retaining wall and extension to existing boundary wall at 40 Ranfurly Road, Dungannon, for Miss Margaret Clark, recommended as an approval. There has been a late objection on that one, and Collie, you're presenting. Thank you, Collie.
Thanks, Chair. This application was presented to members in April 2026 with a recommendation to approve. Following representations made against the proposal at Planning Committee, the application was deferred for member site visit, which took place on the 24th of April 2026 and was attended by Councillor Sean McPeak, Councillor Deirdre Versani and Barry Monteith, and myself. At the site visit, the development was viewed from both the applicant and the objector's properties. 2 additional representations have been submitted during the deferred process, and a late representation was submitted late last night, which has been attached to the addendum for members to consider. At the member site visit, it was pointed out to members that the application appeared, in my eyes, to comply with planning policy. The safety of the wall was considered, and the conclusion of the meeting was that I would liaise with building control to ascertain if they could assess the integrity of the wall, structural integrity of the wall. I subsequently requested that building control inspect the wall, which they did on the 27th of May 26. Building control concluded that the works are unauthorised, but that given they were completed more than 12 months ago, they are outside the scope of enforcement. They gave a commitment that they would issue a letter to the property owners advising them that unauthorised works had been identified, with the recommendation to submit a regularisation application, but that there is no obligation for the applicant to comply with that request. It was also pointed out to the objector on the site visit that land ownership issues cannot be mediated by the planning authority. The agent has corresponded with the original case officer to advise that they are satisfied that all of the land involved is within control of the applicant. Any dispute beyond this is a civil matter to be resolved through legal process. Given that the avenue of inviting building control to assess the development has been exhausted, the application is now presented to members with a recommendation to approve because it is the view of officers that the proposal complies with planning policy. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. Councillor Dan Kerr.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, just viewing the imagery, still very hesitant for this to go ahead. You mentioned about the ownership of the land there. This was actually planned, it does belong to the applicant. Sorry, Colin.
Either or. Sorry, Dan, are you asking, are the photographs from the applicant side or the objector side?
Just just ownership. I think that was something that was mentioned. Who does actually own where the wall was built at? And the other thing is, the proposal is very much out of character, I believe, in the Ranfurly area. Where does the application prefer for massing and scale and design in the application is also another point I wanted to raise. Like I said, I'm just hesitant until there's clarity and there's maybe more issues. Thanks, Chair. And Collie or Colin?
I was born Colin, like, but Collie's fine. Everybody calls me Collie. In relation to ownership, it was part of the original assessment before the deferred process that the ownership had been assessed. Now, at the time, ownership issues were raised, and the case officer at that time corresponded with the agent and advised him that there was a query over who owned what. The agent then slightly amended the plan and has given commitment that he's satisfied that the applicant owns the land that the building's operations are on. I mean, that's as far, until that's queried or any counter evidence is submitted, we can't really get involved in mediating who owns what. So that's for a civil dispute to sort out. I mean, there's been cases before committee recently, very similar, and which the line has been that those are civil matters that we don't mediate on as to who owns what. Planning permission goes to the land. Is the development acceptable? Yes or no, depending on who owns it, is a matter for another day in a courtroom. The impact of character, I mean, that was raised in the objector's second objection, I think. And the objector did provide photographs showing how the development, in his opinion, is out of character. Now, for me, the character of Ranfurly Road is not changed by this development because it is not visible from any public perspective in terms of a main road or anything like that. There are retaining walls and other properties along the way, in the immediate vicinity. If it was plastered, would it look better? Yes. I mean, yeah, it would. But to me, the character of Ranfurly Road, which is quite a area of considerable character, in my opinion, isn't really changed by this because it's at the rear of properties and there's very, very little public perspective of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor
Thank you, Chair. Can you... Thank you. Can you revert back to that previous picture which showed the walls, please? Yeah. So, a couple of issues, and I think they're quite serious issues. I attended the site visit on that, and I know the list of material considerations are not prescriptive, but I would have thought a wall that is substandard, and it has been deemed to be substandard, would absolutely be a material consideration if this application is to build more of a boundary wall and to build further on there's already like a platform on the other side, which I would think puts pressure already on a substandard wall. What we viewed that day was, I don't know who the builder was, or builders. I've never seen anything quite like it. You could put your hand through the wall. It didn't have foundations. There were pieces of wood stuck in the middle of it. Those photographs must be taken by the applicant, because the photographs I took on the day show a very different story. They actually have the wall built over a manhole cover. It's about 30% built over a manhole cover. It was absolutely the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen, both just in normal life and on site visits. I honestly am minded to reverse this and put it for a refusal, because how can it not be a material consideration that they're going to put extra pressure on a wall that is already substandard? That's my starting point. I think Councillor McPeak wants to come in as well. Thank you.
Following on from these comments here, I was at the site meeting too, and it's not about the massing or the suitability of the wall. It's basically down to the safety of the wall. And, you know, as Dee has said, the pictures there don't really do it justice. You could put your hand through where the bottom of the foundation should be, right through to the neighbouring property, the length of your arm. And it was built over existing posts that was presumably a boundary fence. And, you know, the objector was there that day, and he really fears for his well-being to be alongside that wall, because it's just so weak, and the workmanship is abominably poor on it. Now, where that fits in with building control and all that, I don't know, but Colin did raise it with the building control afterwards, and we're told in the report that, you know, we're essentially powerless, building control is powerless and that. So I'm at a loss too. I don't think it should be allowed, but it's up now, and what we do about it is another issue. But it's around the safety and the workmanship. If that had been done properly, a strong shuttered wall with supporting steel and all that on it, it probably wouldn't be a problem from planning terms. But it's the sheer poor workmanship of the wall that I have the issue with.
Thank you, Councillor McPeak. Melvin, you'd like to come in? Melvin?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think there was a clear consideration of the structural integrity or otherwise of this wall after the site visit. Colin, you can, in terms of asking building control what their powers or otherwise may be, but the structural integrity of the wall lies outside planning consideration and is a separate regulatory regime, namely building control. So I would be highly reluctant to persuade you to refuse application because of the way it's built. I see your concerns around it, but there's nowhere in our policy consideration and planning terms that we can hang that on, other than the building control route. So I don't believe that is a material consideration that we should attach determining weight to in this particular case for those that have raised it. Colin, I don't know, maybe you've clarified in your report what building control came back to tell you. If you can maybe clarify that, that would be useful.
Colin?
Yeah. I'll try and get a direct quote from you here at an email. Well, I don't need to. Basically, sorry, not that I don't need to tell you, I don't need to read it. I know what they told me. They said that they took a while to be able to get to inspect the property. I mean, I got in touch with PJ Fox on the Monday after our site visit. I think Brian Monteith contacted them too. It took them a while to get an officer to be able to access both properties. Once they did, they said, yes, the works are unauthorised. And that, but subsequently they were outside the scope of their regulations, and that there was a 12-month window. Similarly to we have a 5-year window in planning, the building control regs must be a 12-month window, and because of that, they were, I think the direct quote was outside the scope of enforcement, but they had asked for a regularisation certificate to be submitted, but made me aware that there was no obligation on the order to do that because the works were outside the 12-year window. I wouldn't disagree that the works are below an acceptable standard, in my opinion, but as Melvin says, there is no planning reason to refuse this. As counterintuitive as it may seem. So.
Councillor Meter Graham, you've been waiting online.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask, sorry, why does it fall outside the remit of enforcement? You know, it has been built without permission. So why, building control can't do anything about it. On page 593, it says that there's a structural engineer's report stating that the wall is unsafe. You know, who ultimately is going to take responsibility for it? You know, do we just let it go? It just seems absolutely ridiculous. And I don't understand why enforcement isn't taking this over. So if somebody could explain that to me, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Colin?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I'm not sure if there's a planning enforcement case on this or not. If there was a planning enforcement case on it, probably the default action would be to ask for a retrospective application, which would get us to where we are now. So if this were refused, then planning enforcement probably could take action. Building control, whenever I say there, Councillor Graham, about the scope of enforcement, this being outside the scope of enforcement, that was a quote from building control, from our building control department. So their regulations, I believe, state that if something's built 12 months, it's outside the scope of their enforcement. Planning enforcement would be different if this does get refused, but to do that we need a refusal reason based on planning policy.
Sorry, can I just come in again? Sorry. If we pass this and this wall falls, or some part of it falls and hurts somebody, kills somebody, are we going to be held responsible because we have passed a dangerous structure?
Colin?
I mean, we've got legal advice here tonight that could answer that. I mean, we had this similarly in Cookstown in a recent application where we approved things, even though there was claims that it was unsafe when it was built on other people's land, etc. But I mean, there's two legal people here tonight can answer that better than me, Councillor Graham.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, there's two separate regimes at play here. One is what this committee is dealing with, and that's planning considerations and planning decisions. The reason I understand it, based from what the case officer is saying, is that there are no planning reasons to refuse. Therefore, even if a planning enforcement file was open, there wouldn't be enforcement action proposed. It would be requesting a retrospective application for planning approval. The second separate regulatory regime is in relation to building control, which the Council also has responsibility for. And the officer has explained that the Building Control Service has been, they have been liaised with. They have looked at this from a building control perspective and would be outside the time limit to take enforcement action, however are seeking a regularisation certificate. As to if anything happened to this, who would be liable, ultimately it's the landowner or whoever's put the structure up. But what's before members tonight are planning considerations, so unless there are planning reasons to refuse, then the strong recommendation is that members would take cognizance of what's in the case officer's report.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Sean Clark, you've been waiting there some time without getting in, so.
That's okay, thank you, Chair. Well, I wasn't at the site meeting, but looking at it and listening to what people have seen, am I right in thinking that that wall or what it's sitting on is going to be part of what is applied for here.
That's a question, Sean, that's a question
Yeah, well, yeah, thanks. So the description is a raised patio area and wall. So that wall that we're looking at is basically the objector's side of the development on the other side. So there's a raised patio. The ground slopes down from the back of the houses. Yeah, so the ground slopes down from the back of the houses. So in the house on the left, that ground has been filled, patio constructed. Well, I don't think there's actually any patio stones down yet. It's just a flat area which it looks like it could be a patio, and then the wall has been extended to retain the fill. So that wall you're looking at is just the objector's view of the whole development, but on the other side of that wall there's a fill that's been implemented to create a level patio.
Sorry, Sean, 1 second. Thank you, Colin.
This application has its own foundation, is independent of what's there.
Such, it's just built on the ground.
Hold on, Sean, your mic's. Go ahead, Sean.
So therefore, we've been asked to approve something which physically hasn't got a foundation.
Yeah.
Colin?
Sorry, what's the question?
You were looking at?
No, I was just saying, basically, yes, you know.
Yes, I mean, my understanding is that it is for retaining wall and extension of what they would consider existing. It's like a platform almost. But again, my question is, how is it not a material consideration when more building will obviously put more pressure on what already has been deemed a substandard wall? So how is that not a material consideration? How is that not a planning consideration is my question. Thank you.
There is no definitive, as you said, there's no definitive list of material considerations. For me, material considerations are, you know, there is guidance on it. And there are examples that are not considered to be material considerations include the protection of private interests, moral considerations, political considerations, and other issues covered by legislation. So that is covered by building control legislation. So therefore, well, there's no legislative definition of a material consideration. I believe that guidance would say that if it's covered by if it's something that you feel isn't right, or it's covered by other legislation, then it's not material consideration in planning terms.
Sorry, apologies, Councillor Dan Kerr.
Can you hear me? Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to second Councillor Verstani's proposal to overturn the decision regarding material considerations. I believe the health and safety of the public needs to be considered because it has been outlined by several councillors who were on site that it's a substandard wall, and I would feel very uncomfortable if it was to be approved tonight and the wall is substandard and is a risk to hurting someone due to the poor workmanship. If the applicant does want to put in a future application, maybe with a wall which is up to the standard, that should be legitimately up to them, but I'm happy to second the proposal to overturn the decision, Chair. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Dan Kerr, there wasn't a proposal, it was a suggestion. Councillor D. Versani.
Chair, just to, sorry, before I finish, just to follow on from that information from from Mr. McKeown, and thank you, that was helpful. And if it were the case that building control could, but they've now said that they can't deal with it because it's outside a certain time limit. So again, I think that's back to what we could judge to be a material consideration. If they genuinely could deal with it, but you have described tonight that they actually can't because it's outside a time limit. So does that not bring it back into what we could legitimately say was a material consideration? I think it is, and I am happy to propose that we actually do not let this one go forward, that we actually refuse it. Thank you.
Well, I mean, they can't take action because they can't take action under a different legislatory framework. It's still different legislation. But I mean, if this was to be approved the right way about, i.e. approved before it was built, and built like that, it wouldn't be planning enforcement that the neighbours come to. It would be building control because it's built incorrectly. Well, that's not my opinion. It's but if it was approved first, and before it was built, and then built in a substandard way, the neighbour wouldn't instinctively ring planning enforcement; they would ring building control enforcement. So that's what I mean when I say it's covered by a different legislative framework. Even though it's technically immune, it's still immune because it's covered in that. I mean, if it's overturned, it's overturned, but there needs to be a reason for it in planning terms.
Thank you, Colin. Councillor Kyle Black.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what's been said by other members, and I would have concerns around approving this as well. I just don't want to leave ourselves exposed as a committee for making a decision which isn't based on planning policy, and are we leaving ourselves exposed in any way there? I think Councillor Versani's had an interesting way of looking at it, where because it's beyond the timescale that building control can actually do something with it, does that then create the potential for this is more a planning consideration now? I'd be keen to get some more thought on if that is something, or the right way that we should be looking at it. As I agree with what's been said, but I just don't want to leave ourselves exposed as a committee to making a decision which isn't based on planning policy. And just as a suggestion, is it something that would be worth deferring to go away to look more at further engagement with building control, or further clarification around what's been suggested actually being a material consideration in the circumstances, to then maybe make a more informed decision at the next committee on it? Just a thought, but keen to hear from officers and potentially legal's view on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Black. I'll pass over to the Councillor Solicitor Clare.
Thank you, through the Chair. So, very interesting way of looking at it. However, it wouldn't then, as the planning officer explained, that in of itself wouldn't take it outside. It's still not being a material consideration. So, whilst it is outside of the enforcement period, it still is a separate legislative framework that would deal with the issues being discussed here. So, the sense I'm getting is that there's two issues that's being referenced, both of them as in potential reasons for refusing this one. One relates to the civil ownership issue, and then the other is the structural integrity, which is dealt with separately under separate legislation, and it's and neither of which are material considerations. So ultimately, if so that would mean this then would be refused. Is that right? So ultimately, it would, if members were to go down that route, need to be careful about what the reasons are, and that there's sound planning reasons, which hasn't been put forward tonight. The second thing is then bear in mind that the applicant would have a right of appeal to the PAC, and there are potential for cost award for unreasonable behaviour. So whilst that would be a matter for the PAC, it's just something to bear in mind that whilst the applicant would have recourse to appeal, there could be further consequences for the council in terms of costs, again because there haven't been planning reasons why it should be refused.
Thank you, Claire. So there's a proposal on the floor. Sorry. Yes, there's a proposal on the floor by Councillor D. Forsani to refuse, and seconded by Councillor Dan Kerr. Sorry, Councillor Black.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate there's a proposal on the floor, but I would also like to put a proposal forward to defer this one for further consideration to be given. I think it would be useful just to take a beat on this one to get some further information on the situation at hand. It just doesn't sit well with me. I'm not keen to approve this, just to be clear, because of the structural integrity point. And it just doesn't sit comfortably with me that as a council we can walk away and have no responsibility for the outworkings of this. So I think taking a beat to just reflect on that and see if there's anything that can be done beyond what's been discussed tonight. I appreciate there's breaches of time periods and so on, but I say it just doesn't sit comfortably that we then would walk away and leave this in the state that it is and the potential consequences of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Councillor Sean McPeak. Sorry. Councillor D. Forsani.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, I would be happy to second Councillor Black's proposal, but I think we all in the chamber, if we could reflect on how strong the feeling is and that there really are very serious concerns on this one, and I think it would be incumbent on us to, reflect as carefully as we possibly can. I'm not sure I've ever seen a case like this in the years that I've been on it. It seems strange that we could go ahead and let this go through in all the given circumstances. So I think it would be worth, and thank you, Councillor Black, for the suggestion but I think we do need to take this one very seriously in terms of, and you heard Councillor Graham as well, in terms of the safety and what happens. It doesn't seem to sit well with any of the councillors, and that's quite a strong position for you to hear from us. So I think it would be worthwhile to at least do some further investigations on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we're all in agreement? Agreed? So we'll move on to 6.13, LAO 9 2025-1188F. Retention of change of use from existing office workshop to single apartment at 4 Derrycran Road, Cookstown, for Miss Danielle McCaver, and it's recommended as an approval. Approved, Councillor Donald McPeak. Second, Councillor Denise Johnston. Thank you. Approved. Item 6.14, LAO 9 2025-1303F. Extension to Assembly Building to include NIE compound at 4 to 8 Kern Road, Castledawson, for Myola Precision Engineering, and it's recommended for approval. Carla, presenting.
Thank you, Chair. This application was deferred by members at June's Planning Committee to allow officers to seek clarification on the Council's BDS position and whether this had an impact on the planning decision-making process. So the BDS position was looked into and relates to a motion carried by the Council in June 2018, and in general terms it relates to investigating the most practical means of implementing the boycott, divestment, sanctions campaign. Upon further consideration of this, and by way of clarification as required by the deferral request, this BDS motion does not and should not impact on the planning decision-making process. Section 45 of the Planning Act 2011 lays down the legislative requirements that must be complied with by the Council when determining a planning application. They include the local development plan, representations, and any other material consideration. There is no legal definition for material considerations. However, they are held to include all the fundamental factors involved in land use planning. Essentially, a material consideration is one which is relevant to making a planning decision as to whether to grant or refuse an application. Material considerations will vary depending on the specific circumstances of each case. I know we had touched on it on the last case, I didn't expect that, but I'll go into it in a wee bit more detail here. So examples of material considerations, and this is examples that are set down in a DFI Development Management Practice Note. So examples of material considerations include the local development plan, plan and policy, plan and history, need, consultee advice, layout, design, amenity, precedence, public opinion, alternative sites, and planning gain. Examples of matters that would not be taken to be material considerations include the protection of private interests, moral considerations, political considerations, and issues covered by other legislation. Therefore, the BDS motion is not a material planning consideration, and to take it into account when deciding to approve or refuse this or any other planning application would leave the Council open to challenge. Members are advised that since this application was deferred at June Planning Committee, this was at close of play today, a total of 158 objections have been received. These objections, although from different individuals, all use a similar template. So I'm going to basically go through and give a summary of the issues raised in these objections. So, first issue, opposition to the application due to the assertion the applicants manufacture components for fighter jets. Next issue, approval of the application is contrary to Mid-Ulster's BDS policy. Next issue, the local community has been kept in the dark regarding a planning decision of such moral consequence. Next issue, Council's support for the applicant is having an impact on services and youth. So objecting to a proposal on the grounds that the business makes components for fighter jets is regarded as being a moral objection. The Planning Department assesses many commercial and industrial applications. The use of the proposed building must be considered in the assessment and in the context of planning matters. In this application, the use proposed is noted as an industrial use. The end use of a product being manufactured in the industrial setting is not deemed to be a material consideration in the assessment of the application. Reference to the Council's BDS policy is inaccurate, as the Council does not have a policy on this matter. Instead, the BDS motion, as noted previously, is regarded as being a moral and/or political objection. This is not a material consideration for the planning application and therefore cannot and has not been given any weight. In response to the suggestion that the local community has been kept in the dark about this proposed development, that is strongly refuted. In line with our statutory duties, the application has followed all procedural requirements. It was advertised in the Derry Post on the 10th of February 2026 and 14 neighbours notified in line with our neighbour notification procedure. Furthermore, the application was also listed on the Mid-Ulster Council website as being advertised. Following the proper advertisement and neighbour notification of the application, the Council received one objection from a neighbouring property prior to the application being considered at the June Committee. For the avoidance of doubt, a recommendation to approve the application and/or a Council decision to grant planning permission does not demonstrate support for the applicant, but instead that the development being applied for is considered as being acceptable at this location for this industrial use and in line with the local development plan, prevailing planning policies and all relevant material considerations. I can advise members that the issues that have been raised in the 158 new objections have been fully considered. However, I consider they hold no weight in the determination of the application, and the recommendation remains to approve, subject to the conditions set out in the deferred report. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. And we now have two speakers. First speaker, Councillor Malachy Quinn, against the application. Malachy? Yes, if you'd like to come up to the podium, thank you. You have 3 minutes when you start, Malachy.
There we go. Chair, my concern today is whether members have sufficient planning information before them to approve this application. The report appears to place weight on a statement that there will be no increase in staff numbers. However, staff numbers alone do not determine the intensity of an industrial operation. Modern manufacturing can increase production through improved processes, automation, additional floor space, increased assembly capacity, and improved logistics without necessarily employing additional staff. Members also need to be clear on what this extension is actually going to be used for. For the plans and supporting information, it is not entirely clear whether the additional floor space is intended for offices, workshops, production, storage, assembly, or any other operational use. That matters because each of those uses have different implications for footfall, vehicle movements, deliveries, dispatches, HGV activity, supplier visits, servicing, and yard operations. If operational use of additional floor space is not clear, I do not see how members can be satisfied that there will be no material intensification of activity on the site. I am also concerned that DFI Roads is not being consulted in this application. Given the lack of clarity around the intended use of the extension and potential increased footfall, traffic, deliveries, servicing, and HGV movements, I believe DFI Roads should be consulted before any decision is made. There is also the issue of cumulative impact. Those proposed builds upon a previously approved production facility, and members are entitled to ask whether cumulative effect of both development has been fully assessed. For those reasons, I believe this application should at least be deferred until further clarification is provided on the intended use of the additional floor space, potential operational intensification, traffic, footfalls, servicing, yard activity, and cumulative impact, and until DFA Roads has had the opportunity to comment. And before I finish, I also want to put on record that separate from those planning issues, I have a wider moral objection to this application. This company is understood to be involved in the manufacture of parts connected to the Israeli military aircraft at a time when we are seeing ongoing genocide in Gaza. I appreciate officers may advise that this is not material planning consideration, and I make no allegation about the lawfulness of the company's operations, but I do believe it should not pass without comment. Public bodies cannot express horror at what is happening in Gaza while treating supply chains connected to that violence as business as usual. So in planning terms, I am asking for deferral due to the lack of clarity around use, intensification traffic, footfall, cumulative impact, and the absence of DFA Roads consultation. But morally, I could not support this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. And now we have Speaker Eamon Moore for the application. Eamon, online. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, you can hear me?
Yes, Eamon, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm an employee of Arkin who represent another position as engineer for this application. I'd like to reiterate what Carla outlined that in her deferred consideration report that the BDS motion cannot be used as material consideration on this application. This application is for simple infill between an existing building and a recently approved building. So this there should be no plan or reason for this infill application to be refused. It's a simple application. Planning have been carried out all the due diligence for this application, and we have provided all the information, all the paperwork to facilitate the decision. I think if it continues to be opposition in this way at Arkin would along with our applicant, my old precision engineer, will continue to challenge this negative decision. And because it's such a simple infill application, I do think it's sort of prejudices against the applicant. Anywhere else in any other business in this type of situation, in this development or this site, this infill application wouldn't even be questioned. So I think planning should continue to go ahead and approve this application. That's me.
Thank you, Eamon. So it has been brought to my attention that there has been some late information received within the council at the 12th hour, and it would be right and just that that is considered. Carla?
Thank you. Thank you, Gavin. So an email was received at 6:10 this evening into the planning mailbox, and it has came from an individual at Myola Precision Engineering, and they have attached a signed declaration that they had previously supplied to Invest Northern Ireland to enable Myola Precision Engineering to be considered for potential future funding opportunities. And along with that signed declaration is also attached other supporting documentation. This information came in too late to be attached to the addendum, but I can open it here and explain to you what it is. But the stance the planning department are taking is the BDS motion is not a material consideration in this application. This new information that's come in is basically a confirmation statement. It's screening questions, and I'll read out the screening questions for you. Do you, at your Northern Ireland manufacturing site, manufacture arms or their components? There's a yes/no option. They have ticked yes. If yes, stage 2 declaration must be completed. The declaration has been completed, but there is reference in that declaration. The applicant confirms that from its Northern Ireland manufacturing operations, it does not manufacture any arms or arms components as defined in Article 2 of the Arms Trade Treaty, and that are directly exported by the applicant to any country listed in Annex C. So if I click on Annex C, the two countries that are listed are Israel and Myanmar. So that's basically what's included in the email, the wording, the confirmation statement. There's guidance that has been attached following written ministerial statement of 16th of October 2025, and there's one other attached document which is a legal document, and it is legislation treaty series number 1 Arms Trade Treaty. So that's the extent of the late information that came in, but again, I'll revert back to my presentation in which I detailed what is a material planning consideration in our assessment of this application. It remains that we're recommending approval of this application because any reference to the BDS motion is not something that we consider as material.
Thank you, Carla. Melvin?
Thank you, Chair. So clearly this is where we need to take a slight step back and consider what was said in Carla's report. You've heard some information there quite recently which to me delves fairly and squarely into the areas that aren't material planning considerations around the production of arms, where they're supplied to, where they're not supplied to. those are not material considerations that members should weigh in any way in their mind in terms of a planning decision on this proposal. What I do want to go back over are some concerns that Councillor Quinn did raise, and Carla, perhaps you can step us through. So we have concerns raised around the number of staff, the amount of floor space, and how the floor space is utilised. I am anticipating, Carla, the application form, both via its description and whatever other details are in under the various questions, will specify that. And maybe can you go through each of those in turn to establish what's been declared?
Okay, so looking at the P1 form that was submitted with the planning application, so Malachy, I think one of your questions was in relation to what the floor space is being used for. So you can view the P1 form on the portal, and it clearly indicates that the floor space for this application is being used for production. So that box has been ticked, production. You also raised a query about staff numbers, isn't that right? So the P1 form, again, it details the number of existing employees, which is 133. The expected increase in employees or other attendees associated with this application, there will be none. So there's no additional employees as a result of this. Now that's what's been put on the P1 form. You'd also concern about DFI and the lack of a consultation to DFI roads. Now I was just reading through the first committee report, which you all have a sight of. So the proposal, one of the criteria that we would look at under the PED 9 policy, criteria G, the existing road network can safely handle any extra vehicular traffic that the proposal will generate. The proposal does not involve, and this was the officer's consideration at that time, the proposal does not involve any change to existing access arrangements within the site or with the access to the public road, and with no increase in staff numbers, consultation with DFI roads was not considered necessary. So that's our justification for not having consulted DFI roads. So was there any other queries?
Sorry, hold on a second.
Sorry, maybe Malachy, do you want to come up?
Melvin?
So just let me be very clear. We have a very clear application form from the applicant. We've no evidence before us that any intensification is necessary. It's quite often the case to expand premises doesn't mean that it automatically falls that you employ more staff. It may just be internal ways of operating. We don't know. Councillor Quinn's last point about intensification, that's all encompassed in the details that are on the P1 form. We're being told there's no increased staff. There's an increase in production space, which is totally acceptable and it's fine. And therefore, I'd fail to see any intensification argument that doesn't already exist on the premises at present. So I fully agree there was no need to interrogate highway safety on this application. And it's very clear from previous assessments that we've adopted a very clear position that that is not a consideration that we need to be concerned about in approving this fairly minor extension to the property.
Sorry, 1 second, Dan.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, just in the interest of late letters, how long? The phone's just I also received an email, and in the interest of accountability and transparency, I can show it to you, our planning officers, at 10 to 6. Councillor Donn, the objection I somewhere. Hi, I would like a chance to speak on the objection today at the plan meeting. We weren't aware there was a deadline. Yours sincerely, and then the objector's name. So, well, there's over 150, 67. How many objections is there? Well,
At close of play today, 5 p.m, there was 158 objections that we had recorded.
yeah, Chair. I appreciate the lateness of the objection, and I know it's your discretion, and I'm not asking for him to be given a voice tonight, but I would be happy to request a deferral to let them go through the proper procedures, to let them argue their case, because there's 150 objections here. I think there's a case to be made here, because eerily similar, there was an application regarding a community centre, and we received a letter at the 11th hour, and they're allowed to get another chance to try and talk things out. So because of, I think, precedent's already been set, that an objection was received fairly at the 11th hour. I appreciate it was the night before, and this objection's 10 minutes before the meeting, but I'd be happy enough to propose a deferral to allow these people to speak. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah, well, look, right, the protocol we have for the operation of the Planning Committee is public. My understanding would be that there's been a fairly high degree of knowledge around this application coming back on the agenda with the amount of correspondence that we have got recently. So I'm not of the view that we should defer it for a late speaking request which has come in at that stage, Chair. If you start doing that, it's endless, absolutely endless. We've heard points that have been made by Councillor Quinn. We've 150 odd letters which raise a lot of issues which Carla has very clearly and precisely set out, and you've heard actually us cover a number of valid planning concerns around the number of staff, visitors, intensification, and you've heard our view on why we cannot accept or attach any determining weight to the other moral political issues. So on that basis, Chair, my strong view is that we don't agree any further speaking requests that we haven't already addressed to date.
I would agree with that. There is a process, and we can't deviate away from it. I would agree with that, Melvin. There is a process, and we can't deviate away from that. Councillor Kyle Black.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, there's strong feelings around this application, and whilst I disagree with some of them, people are entitled to their views, and that's to be respected. However, the remit of this committee is to focus on planning policy and material considerations, and that's been made very clear through some of the recent engagements that we've had. So whilst there's strong views and some things that have been alluded to here tonight, we have to set that aside and focus on the planning policy and material considerations that's in front of us. So officers have assessed this application against planning policy, and the recommendation is to approve the application. So hopefully that and the further clarification that's been provided by the officers goes some way to reach that conclusion, deals with some queries that's been raised, and for example those have been raised by Councillor Quinn. And just on that contribution, it was quite interesting to hear that there's a favour in reducing and curtailing employment in favour of automation. I thought it was interesting, so just to note that. But we as a committee, we know what we can consider, what we can't consider. And the final point I would make is that if we were to not approve this, I think we're leaving ourselves very exposed as a committee to legal challenge on this and the potential costs that would be incurred, which ultimately would be borne by the ratepayer in this too. So there's also members that, there's a desire to want to give people more opportunities to sort of air deferrals or air objections and whatnot, but we have to understand there's an applicant here that needs to be treated fairly in the middle of this as well. So just, I think members need to be cognizant of that too. So on the basis of all of that, I would just conclude by saying I would propose the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
The proposal, Chair.
Councillor Clement Cuthbertson. Councillor Dan Kerr.
Once again, Chair, how is this any different for the deferral of Galway? And I would like to make a proposal that this is deferred to give these people an opportunity to speak. How come it's okay for one application but not the other?
Councillor Kerr, it's two completely different situations. What you're spelling out came in after the time, but the Galway Pierce's situation was addressed within the remit of the rules of the planning office.
After Friday, or I was under the impression it came in last night, fair enough, but I still would like to put the proposal.
Sorry, just a point of clarity, it didn't come in, it came in last week.
Emma's just going to check.
Emma?
Firm. Because it was just, sorry, sent to a few different places. Third, wasn't it?
Come in as part of speaking requests.
But I think it was sent to someone else.
And that's in the deadline.
It was within the deadline, certainly. I'll have to check for sure, because it was sent to a few different parties, like, but it was definitely before the deadline. I was just forwarded it, sorry, afterwards, but I will. I don't know what the name of it's called. I think it was maybe Friday. Yeah, sorry, third. The third, whatever the third was, sorry.
I'm going to conclude, Chair, because you have been very fair to me. I didn't see it on the online platform, Chair, so if it came in, it wasn't uploaded. But the side or the other issue is, I would still like to request a deferral. I'm not saying this application has to be rejected. I just believe in the interest that there's over a significant amount of objections, and this person has, I think, emailed, I don't know if he's emailed me directly or every plan councillor for deferral. It's for 1 month. We've done it before for other applications. Some members of the public aren't aware of the process. So in the interest of that, just to give them a chance to outline why they feel strongly why this application shouldn't go ahead, they should be given a voice, Chair. That's my proposal, Chair, but fully respect the decision. Thank you.
Dan, thank you for that. What planning considerations are you saying that it should be deferred? I'm not talking about the objectors, I'm talking about... Sorry, hold on, Dan.
The lateness of the objection, Chair, 10 to 6. He has, I can show you the email, he's outlined he wants to speak on the matter. Is that not consideration, and it's at the discretion of... So a proposal can't be made in them grounds then?
No, it's came after the time, Councillor Kerr, and I can't accept that. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, with all due respect, there's a process there and a policy in terms of when these requests can come in. It's also something to say, look, if there's something that was to come in that actually had some detail within it as to what we needed to consider, that's also different as well. That the committee may take a different view on that. But just to simply ask for the right to speak because you have an objection, I think is quite insufficient, particularly after the deadline. So as I said before, I think there's an applicant here that also needs to be treated fairly in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. A point well made, and on that ground, I can't accept the deferral. Okay. So we have a proposal on the floor to accept the officer's recommendation. So we have a proposal by Councillor Kyle Black and seconded by Councillor Clement Cuthbertson. And we're all in agreement?
I blame Officer Chair.
Okay. Yes. So we'll take a recorded vote on that. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Kyle Black. Right. Sorry, we'll do that again. Councillor Black.
4.
Against.
Four.
Councillor Emer Carney, you're on mute.
Abstain.
Councillor Clement Cuthbertson.
4.
Councillor Sean Clark.
Abstain.
Councillor Mark Robinson.
4.
Councillor Donald McPick.
Abstain.
Councillor Sean McPick. Councillor Meta Graham online.
4.
Councillor Donna Mullen online.
Dan.
Councillor Dan Kerr.
Against.
Councillor Deirdre Forsani.
Abstain.
Councillor Kevin McElvogue.
Against.
The recommendation for approval carries. .15 LAO 9 2026. Sorry, that's been deferred for an office meeting, folks. So matters for information, minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 2nd of June 2026. And item 8, receive validation checklist report. Melvin?
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate this is just for information, members, but I suppose some of the key messages coming out of this in relation to, you'll be aware, we've been working on a validation checklist to try and really help improve front-loading the quality of planning applications that come into the system. So whilst there's a report for information, key messages are, we had a workshop on the 12th of January, we had a workshop for agents and a public consultation exercise. At 3.3 in the report, you'll see consideration of the various responses we got to that. and you'll see also how we considered those, and some things were fair enough points that we had to rethink. We tend to go live on the 3rd of August 26 with the checklist, and we think it's important to review it after 12 months, just in case there are any obvious issues that arise during its first year. And so, as I say, that's just for information, members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Melvin. That ends the normal business. We will now move into confidential